Hello guys, and welcome to week 9 of Our Reason for Hope, the teaching series where I'm going through the messages and the character of God and explaining why those different themes and different characters can give us hope. We have gone through a loads of different things. Thank you so much if you stuck around and watched a few, only one, all of them. I really appreciate all your feedback. This is week 9, and this week we're looking at the fact that God provides all we need. Now, every week I've been having someone on, whether they're from the church or someone that I know from outside Cannon Valley Church. But this week, actually, I want to share mine and Nia's own testimony of coming down, because there are so many examples of God's provision in it. But before I do that, of course, I'm just going to break down a little bit about the truth that God provides all we need and why it's a reason for us to have hope. And the first thing is really important to say about when we're talking about provision is that, yes, provision is about God providing us finance, but that is just one small part of God's provision for us. So often we can get into the idea or the mindset that, oh, God's going to provide and I'm going to be rich, or I'm at least going to be secure, I'm at least going to have just enough for what I need. And that's not always the case of the way it goes, and I'll get down to that in a little bit. But I believe that God provides so much more than that. And here's a few examples. In 2 Peter chapter 1, he says, Peter says, by his divine power, God has given us everything we need for living a godly life. Everything we need for living a godly life. And I think you'd agree that when living a godly life comes into it, usually finance is not front and centre. It is not the main thing about living a godly life. In James, it says that every good and perfect gift comes from God. So every gift that comes from God and all we need for a godly life, these are 2 things that the Bible tells us God provides for us. And yet, as I said, a godly life is not made up of one of possessions or what you have or wealth or everything you desire. That's ultimately not what a godly life looks like. It's made up of faithfulness, perseverance, forgiveness, humility, and so many other characters that reflect the character of God. And so maybe we have to retrain our mind about what God's provision actually looks like for us, because I've heard people say, well, God hasn't provided for me, and I look around and they've got a house and a family and maybe they just don't have enough as money as they'd like, but they've got so many other things that God's provided them with. And so it's a difficult one sometimes for us to get our heads around out of this financial mindset and more into a character mindset. He gives us what we truly need. And I truly believe that there are so many things in your life right now that you could be giving thanks to God for, that you could have this incredible gratefulness to God for, because He has provided it, He has given it. But I think so often we're so quick to go, oh well, I'm not as rich as that person over there, I don't have the same clothes or the same house or car as that person over there, so that means God hasn't provided for me. But ultimately in Matthew 6 verses 26 to 34, I'm not going to read it all out, but I'll break it down. Basically, it's talking about the idea that these birds and plants are fed and they grow, and they don't know any idea, they don't worry about where their next food or clothing comes from. And it's basically asks the question, how much, if God looks after the birds of the air and the plants of the ground, how much more will He look after you? Don't worry about what you eat, drink, or wear. Verse 33 says this, but seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. The Bible is very clear. Christianity, the Christian life, in fact life on earth, Christian or non-Christian, has trials and troubles and tribulations and struggles. But we have a God who is faithful. He provides what we need. And yes, God is faithful, still faithful, not just to provide for us, but also to bless us beyond what we deserve. Guys, God is not just giving you the bare minimum. God wants to bless you, but it might not be exactly as you think. 2 Corinthians 9:8 says this, and God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. You see, pick up on this. Our own receiving of anything, our own, we don't earn anything that comes from God, but when He gives it, it's not so that we can go, oh great, My life's great now. I have everything that I need. I've just, I can just swan around and do what I want. No, it's so that we would abound in goodness. That you will abound in every good work. So yes, God promises to provide what we need for our character, but also what we need for our day-to-day. He does promise that He will do that. Now, whether that's through a lightning bolt, that's very rare. There's stories in the Bible of people being fed by crows when they needed to be fed. That happens much less these days, it must be said. But as a church, we are here to provide for one another. As friends, as family, who are you there to be the call of God? Who are you there to be the answer to a prayer for someone, to provide for them? But ultimately, and this is why I've left it to the end, because I really want this to be the takeaway. Ultimately, God provides for what we need according to His plans and His purposes, not ours. Not what we need, what we feel we need, or what we want, but what God knows that we need and what God's plans are for us. The best example I can give you of this is the book of Philippians. It's Paul writing to the church in Philippi. And he says this, it's a very famous verse, Philippians 4:12 to 13. And it says this, I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I've learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. Verse 13, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. For I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, another version puts it. And so often we leave verse 13 and we say, for I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and we take it out of context and we say, oh, fantastic. But ultimately this verse comes from Paul recognizing that God will give him everything he needs, and sometimes that looks like an empty stomach, sometimes that looks like a full stomach, sometimes that looks like living with plenty, sometimes that looks like living with little. There are people in this earth, Christians, who have millions and millions of pounds and they feed it into great causes and God blesses them to live incredibly wealthy. There are some people that live struggling paycheck to paycheck, and yet in this strange upside down kingdom of God, God provides for both of them exactly what they need. Why? So that we can abound in good works. So can I encourage you, in the situation you're in at the moment, don't look to the left and to the right. Don't look at that other person and think, oh, well, God's providing for them and He's not providing for me. No. Let's all try and be like Paul. Let's say that I now know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's a full stomach or empty, plenty or little. I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. God is a provider, and He will provide all you need. Thanks, Alexa. God is a provider. He will provide all you need. But ultimately, it's based on His plans for your life, not your own. And now, guys, I'm just going to share briefly mine and Nia's story of how we came to Cannon Valley Church. And it's because actually it shows lots of different areas and aspects of God's provision to us. There's three aspects I'm going to look at: the provision of opportunity, the provision of clarity or guidance, and the provision then of finance. So the provision of opportunity, how did that work? Well, I was coming out of Bible college. I was quite a little bit disenfranchised with the church and being in ministry. I thought, you know what, I'm too young. I'll get to 30, 35 and then I'll start ministry. And I was looking for graduate jobs. We knew we wanted to live here in South Wales. And I was looking and absolutely nothing came up. There was nothing that jumped out at me. I went for a few things and never got any responses. And so me and Nia just sat down and we prayed and we said to God, God, whatever it is you have for me, bring it out of complete left field. God, just make it clear that that's what you have. And I think within that week, or at the most, it was 2 weeks, I'd been contacted by Luke Goodway, who was the pastor of Cannon Valley Church at the time, and said, hey, I've got a contact. My wife works with your mother-in-law. Are you coming out of Bible college? Do you need a job? Are you looking for ministry work? And within 6 weeks, we'd met. I'd had an interview with him. He'd had an interview with us and the wife. We'd interviewed with the elders, and we were offered the place in the church. So that was the provision of opportunity. We prayed for God to open a door, and He swung a door wide open beyond what we could hope or imagine. And then provision of clarity and guidance. And listen, I love where we are right now, but I was middle class English. I was going to the working class Welsh valleys. I was worried, would people accept me? What would they think of me? And is this where we really want to grow up and start our lives and you know, raise a child, etc.? And so we were asking God for guidance, and on 3 separate occasions, on three consecutive days, the same verse came up. And for the first 2 days, I didn't really hear it. I was like, okay, you know, whatever. But on the last day, the third time, it was broken down to me, and it was an amazing way. It was when I was at Bible college. It was Luke 10, when Jesus sends the disciples and his followers out to go and share the gospel, to go and meet people, to heal, to do incredible things. And there's a few, and the first time it was I was studying for a paper. I was writing notes, and I saw it. I thought, oh, okay, that sort of relates, and it just sort of stuck with me. Then the next day I was in my tutor group, and it came up, and I was like, okay, that's weird. That registered with me yesterday. Okay, I'll just keep that on the back burner. And then the next day we had our Bible college church service that we have on a Wednesday afternoon. And the same verse came up. And then on that third time, the person who brought it, who was the pastoral dean at the time, Paul Folland, I remember him saying, guys, there are so many people at that time that were trying to make excuses. They were saying, hey, can I go and first, you know, that people said, oh, can I go bury my dead before I follow you, Jesus? Can I go and do this? Can I go and do that? And Jesus says, no, don't make any excuses. And then when he sent out his followers, he says, don't take anything. Don't wait for money. Don't ask questions. Go, take a bag and go. And he just says, stop making excuses. When God gives you an opportunity, go. And it was just like God absolutely slapped me around the face. And he gave us clear guidance and clarity. And because we're such faith-filled people, me and Nia came together and we said, okay, God, you've got to give us one more thing. You've got to give us one more proof that you are in this and that you're guiding us. And so Nia went to work, and I think it was a few days later. And she is a nurse in the hospital. At the time, she was at Hereford Hospital, and she bandages a child up. And she looks at the back of the packet, and on the back it says Mountain Ash, Wales. Not Cardiff, not just Wales. It says Mountain Ash, Wales, the very place we were going to be going, and the very place where Cannon Valley Church is based. And we just could not believe it. And she went through the rest of the bag of packages, and she scrambled around, and everything else said either Birmingham or Cardiff or London. And that particular package had Mountain Ash that she picked out and looked at. And it was just like God saying, guys, the door is open. You need to go. And so we made the decision and we went. But even going wasn't an easy decision. Why? Well, because at the time, Cannon Valley Church didn't have any money to pay to an assistant pastor. And so Luke said to us, look, you can come, you can work part-time, you can work somewhere else and just be part of the church part-time. But we felt really strong that God was calling us to go there full-time, to just sacrifice and to go there. And so I accepted the job. I sent a text to Luke one morning, and I said, Luke, do you know what? We've been praying about it, and we believe we want to do it full-time. Don't worry about the pay. Pay me when there's money, but we just know that God is calling us here. And that afternoon, Luke texted me and said, mate, that's amazing. You will not believe what's just happened. We've just had a church that I'm connected with offer to give us a lump sum of money to give to whatever we're stepping out into. And so that entire lump sum came to me a little bit as a lump sum and then sponsored me effectively through the first year of my ministry with Cannon Valley Church. So it was just this incredible example of God's provision. Yes, through God's finance, but also through the opportunity that He came, and then the clarity and guidance that He sent us through. And since then, He's provided for us in so many different ways. In love, in courage, in perseverance, with a baby, in our marriage, with friends, with Simon and Millie coming and being a part of the church, with the amazing elders, with so many different things God has provided for us in every way. And so guys, I just want to say that God is a provider. But remember, as the scriptures say, seek first His kingdom and everything else will be added on to you. It's not our desires, it's not our kingdom that we're seeking. It's not that we would be known as having loads. It's His kingdom that we're seeking. It's so that we would abound in every good work, and that is according to His needs and His plans that He will provide for us. So guys, that is how God's provision for us gives us hope.